I knew David ever since we were little kids. As the older we got, we just became closer and closer.
Me, Mark, Emily all lived in the same neighborhood. We're all really close with David, and he lived right down the street from me. I spent almost every day of my life with him.
Just like Emily, I became closer to David as we got older, and in a small community like this, friends mean everything.
And I'm sure wherever you're from, we have that much in common. Friends mean everything.
And we're not actors, we're kids, students like you, and we have an important story to tell you.
About something that happened in our town right here. This is our school. David and I learned a lot together, side by side. He was a pretty bright guy.
We played football together for 4 years. I think everyone would agree that David was the hardest worker on the team. Everyone respected him. He led by example, and he made us better football players and people.
We also partied together. Like most of you know, sometimes partying means alcohol.
David was always trying to think of something else, something creative to do. But most of the time when we did party, he was the designated driver.
Our community had an alarming rate of teenage alcohol use. I think most kids know that you have to be 21 to be able to drink, but I think in reality, you know as well as I do, not everybody pays attention to that law.
Here in town, some community leaders decided to do something about the problem, get the facts out about alcohol.
You know that a lot of us get our knowledge about alcohol from our friends. That information isn't always accurate.
Every 15 minutes was a program brought into our school just before graduation.
The name stuck with us. Every 15 minutes, someone on a U.S. road dies or is seriously injured from an alcohol-related crash, not an accident.
A crash while DUI, driving under the influence, is no accident. Its victims are victims of violent crimes and often end up DOA, dead on arrival.
The day started out welcoming the Grim Reaper. He looked a little goofy, and it was funny for a while. 24 students were selected as victims, one from every classroom. Every 15 minutes throughout the day, the Grim Reaper entered a class, chose his victim, and escorted them out.
Amanda was a junior at SLB High School. She was
An officer then read an obituary to the class written by the victim's parents beforehand. As it turned out, David was one of these chosen ones.
And captain of the varsity basketball team.
Well, in writing David's obituary for the every 15-minute program, I didn't think I was going to have a problem with it. In working at a newspaper for the last 12 years, I've had contact with people submitting obituaries. I knew the kind of things that go into writing an obituary, so when I sat down to write David's, I wrote it out and thought I had it finished. I gave it to David, and he reads it and realizes that, well, you didn't date it, Mom, and didn't tell me how I died. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, then I decided just to put the date of when this program was happening at school, and then I just wrote that he died in an alcohol-related accident.
These students were then made up as members of the living dead to represent their victim status. They returned to class and became a constant reminder to us that alcohol is a dangerous and often deadly drug. If you don't believe it's a drug, then believe it's the biggest problem we face as teens.
Now, as part of the living dead, these student victims couldn't participate or speak to anyone, including staff, for the entire day. They were no longer with us.
How David could keep quiet for a whole day was beyond me. It really got you thinking. What if they never came back? These were our friends. What would the impact be? It then became a little weird.
I was used to seeing David on the football field as number 21, not as part of some kind of statistic. It was eerie seeing these white ghosts all day. It was depressing, and that hit home. The fact is, alcohol is a depressant. It slows the activity of the brain.
Some of our friends had the mistaken idea that alcohol actually improves a person's performance. Don't kid yourself.
I'm sure everyone knows that once you get a few beers in you, things start to change and you start to act differently. This might make a person feel more confident to drive.
But it's a false sense of security and a deadly mistake.
Alcohol does not improve your coordination or thinking or reflexes.
I was shocked to find out that a lot of kids didn't know that drinks like wine coolers contained alcohol.
Or that beer or wine coolers could easily get you drunk. and even more easily impaired.
Impaired means you may not be falling down drunk, but your ability to think clearly and act appropriately is not fully there.
While the Grim Reaper roamed the school, that same day, officers visited the parents of each victim at their place of employment to deliver a death notification. In realistic fashion, they informed the parents of their child's death, just as they have to do all too many times.
Adam was hit by the drunk driver.
In the afternoon, the entire student body gathered to the football field. David, along with the other members of the Living Dead, were escorted on the field by the Grim Reaper. Played out in front of us was a scene that occurs every 15 minutes somewhere in our nation.
There's a bad car accident in front of the high school. Oh my God! Right in front of the high school on the highway. Right in front of
Some of our other friends took roles as crash victims and participants of an alcohol-related head-on collision. Police, paramedic, and fire crews staged a series of events typical in responding to such an emergency.
Highway 9, I see we have two confirmed DOAs at this time. We have one.
The police immediately arrested the driver since our state, like most states, has a zero-tolerance law. That means that any detectable amount of alcohol in the blood, any alcohol at all, for those under 21 will land you in jail.
We watched as the coroner's office responded to supervise the removal of the dead. Our friends were placed in body bags and not removed until arrival at the coroner's office.
Just think about staring at the inside of a body bag for 45 minutes. You might get some sober thoughts. You might think about the fact that motor vehicle deaths are the leading cause of death for teenagers. Nearly half, 40%, involve alcohol.
Another student was critically injured in this mock accident. The emergency crews treated her at the scene and transported her to a local hospital. The emergency room staff at the hospital went to work on her as if she were really hurt. The images were a vivid reminder of the experience victims are forced to endure and the ever-widening circle of people affected by a decision to drink and drive.
She was pronounced brain dead. The doctor spoke with the parents about their daughter's condition. He talked about organ donations. They were then allowed to see their daughter one last time before taking off life support.
As in real life, that night, the Living Dead students never came home. They stayed overnight together and participated in a special gathering. There they listened and interacted with community volunteers and professionals about the issues of alcohol use.
The next day at school, an assembly was held for juniors and seniors. Parents attended along with community volunteers and participants of the Every 15 Minutes program.
We saw a video of the previous day's events. The Living Dead shared their thoughts and letters written the night before to their parents.
People usually use scare tactics to try to teach us. It doesn't work. Well, hearing the facts and seeing how it affects other people, that's what opened my eyes.
Dear Mom and Dad, every 15 minutes, someone dies in the United States in an alcohol-related collision. Today I died. Sucks, huh? In just a short period of time, I've experienced so many emotions, felt the pain of so many others that even I was affected. Was it the Santa Cruz coroner telling unreal stories of alcohol-related deaths? Was it my obituary being read to my classmates? Was it the mock accident? Or was it my realization that I have another chance at life and to go home to my family and not to the morgue? So I am lucky to have caring parents, great friends, and most of all, life.
Some of the kids at the rally took this seriously. It really affected them. And others, well, I guess they thought this wasn't real. Stage hype. Can't happen.
One of the things that hit home for us is how many people are affected by one bad decision, the decision to drink and drive.
They demonstrated that fact in the assembly. Officers of the law are deeply involved. They stood behind the Living Dead. Those also standing were hospital staff, paramedics, coroner's offices, clergy, parents, friends, the community, courts and attorneys, and mostly the family left behind, the families of victims and survivors.
I don't think anyone was prepared for the intensity. Here, these Living Dead, our friends, had a second chance. An opportunity to start over again. We felt we knew the facts about alcohol.
School was over, and we sat as graduates in these stands. It was finally summer.
I was at the party that night on July 3rd. Alcohol was available, and I lost track of David for a little while in the house. You've got to know we have the obligation to stop our friends from driving if they've been drinking. I know it takes courage to take away the keys from someone or to say, no, I can't drive if I've been drinking, but too many innocent people can be hurt. If you're any kind of friend, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to stop them.
Someone tried to take the keys from the driver, but he insisted he was fine. You remember what we learned about alcohol in the blood. It gives you a false sense of security.
Alcohol muddles your judgment. It starts even with the first drink. It's a fact. You may not feel it, but your body does.
If you know you're going to drink, then you've got to have a well thought out plan before your activities begin. You could make arrangements to spend the night.
If you aren't going to spend the night, your best bet is to arrange for a safe ride from a friend you trust.
Or you could designate a friend who's not drinking that night to be the designated driver. Some type of plan is critical.
He used to always call me at 12:30 to let me know he was going to be late, but he was calling that night at 12:30 to let me know that his safe ride had left the party and that he and Billy were stuck and that they were just going to spend the night.
So David had a plan. He and 4 others went out to the garage just to listen to a new car stereo. But why they got in the car and why they drove off is still a mystery. He knew better than that. The sad fact was, David and the other 4 had been drinking that night.
The hard part is, since alcohol clouds your judgment, at which point do you know you've crossed the line of clear thinking and can no longer make rational decisions? David must have crossed that line.
I've heard kids say, oh, I drank coffee, or took a cold shower, or got some fresh air to sober up more quickly, but it doesn't work this way. None of those things rid the bloodstream of alcohol any faster. Only time makes a difference, a lot of time.
We went out to look for David and the others and saw the helicopter fly in and the ambulances parked. We saw the driver airlifted out and thought, oh, that must be the worst. But no one knew where David was. The coroner's van then drove up.
The car hit a tree sideways and split in two. In the process, it ruptured a gas line.
I said, so where's David? And he said, well, there was five kids in the car. The driver and another boy were being airlifted, and David wasn't in the helicopter. And 2 boys died at the scene. And there was another one burned beyond recognition. And I said, and David? And he said, he was the one burned. And that's the moment I went to shock.
Each of the young men that were killed were only sons in their family. I can't imagine the pain that their families had to go through. I know this was the hardest experience that I've ever had to go through in my life, and it's really hard to believe that somebody that I loved and cared about so much was killed because of a stupid decision to drink and drive.
When you lose someone you care about, it's like if someone took a chunk out of you, it's horrible, and you'll never forget it for the rest of your life.
I'd never spent more than 2 or 3 days without being with David, and now I'm never with him, for the rest of my life. So it's just weird to me and for everyone. It was so close to David.
A lot of our friends have reacted in different ways. I know a few that have vowed never to drink alcohol again, and that's pretty intense. As far as I know, they've kept this promise.
And for those that are still going to drink, they know now that they have to formulate a plan to get home safely, even before they drink. And it's going to take a lot of courage, but they vowed to never drink and drive.
And then there are the many people who don't think of the consequences or the many innocent victims involved. The consequences of David's killer are 8 years in prison, 10 years of community service after that, and he has to live with this decision for the rest of his life that he destroyed 3 of his friends' lives and put a huge burden on the other man.
Alcohol clouds your judgment and reasoning. It prevents you from making good decisions.
For those who choose to drink, the way is pretty clear. It's deadly if you choose to drive.
David's still very much a part of my life, he always will be.
Not a day goes by when David doesn't cross my mind. I think of him every single day at all times of the day.
You might say we think about it every 15 minutes.